We are live.
Good afternoon, one and all present here. Myself, Vani Gupta. I'm working as project intern at Pharma Social Hands Together. I welcome you all to this knowledgeable session on Let's Decode Uniform Civil Code. So, Pharma Social Hands Together is zero fund raise organization working on different sustainable development goals like zero hunger, zero good health well-being, quality education, gender equality, and many more. Today, we present a connect with Youth of India session on Let's Decode Uniform Civil Code. I welcome our guest, Himanshu Khanna sir, who is pursuing his MA in Political Science from University of Delhi. He is a gold medalist at University of Delhi. I welcome you, sir. Over to you.
Namaste and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Vani, for such generous introduction. And I'm sorry for the delay. There was some technical issue at my end. DU Wi-Fi is not working these days, so I had to arrange for my hotspot. And without any further delay, I shall begin with my introduction first, and then getting on to the topic. As Vani told you, my name is Himanshu Khanna, and I'm an MA previous student at Department of Political Science, University of Delhi. I'm currently working as an associate with the Youth 20 India Group Official Consultation Forum for youth from all G20 member countries to be able to dialogue with each other. So yes, the structure of my discussion today on decoding UCC shall be as follows. I have divided it into 7 parts. The first part will be the introduction. In introduction, I'll be just simply defining the scope of my discussion today. The second thing will be reading out Article 44 and its scope, and what does it imply. The third shall be understanding the constituent power as such, like who can bring about the laws under UCC under Article 44, what is the constituent power from the Constitution itself. Then the fourth one will be what are the implications of the Uniform Civil Code? Like once it gets implemented, so what changes will it herald, or what I would say the changes in the personal laws would be there at 3 levels. The fifth shall be facing the antecedents. Here I'll give a very brief overview of the Hindu Code Bill, because it is somewhere or the other the first attempt to codify personal laws. And whenever UCC is talked about, Hindu Code Bill is quintessential to be talked about. Then the sixth shall be, comprehending the diversity of personal laws as such. Because India is a very diverse country, we all know n number of religions, n number of languages, customs, tribes, ethnicities, and amongst all, they have their personal laws. For instance, not every Hindu, might be marry in their own, same kinship. In North, it is different. In South, it is different. Then we are coming to what is the rationale behind this UCC, like as in why should it come and or why should it not? Like I'll be presenting both the sides, and the last one will be the way forward, as in how can it be approached, or how since we are still very much talking about it in the air. The moment UCC someone talks about it becomes controversial. So the way forward can be quite, how to approach it gradually. So yes, coming on to my first part, that is the introduction. So the, Prime Minister recently said in, I think, Madhya Pradesh, that the government is thinking about UCC and it shall benefit minorities and everyone. In Parliament, in this monsoon session itself, on the last Thursday, a question was asked on the implementation of UCC, and the ministry of law replied that law commission had started the discussion on relevance and importance of the subject and various court orders on the matter. And on the question about the modalities of the UCC, that is like what will be its framework, finer complexities, Law Minister Arjun Ram Meghwal told the Rajya Sabha that since the law panel was still in the process of holding consultations, the question of modalities does not arise at this stage. So, therefore, the scope of this talk also shall be limited to what the theme suggests, that is, decoding the UCC in a broad manner without getting into final complexities, since no one knows at this point in time as to how a UCC would look like. Because many attempts have been made and they have not been able to, come to, any result. So now my second part is reading Article 44. Since I'm a political science student now and doing masters, our professors always ask us, to read the original. Do not go to reference books. Reference books were meant for undergraduation and something. And of course, when it comes to the constitution, its articles, it is always, advised to read the original article from the constitution to understand important terms, then, get to know what was the intent of the framers behind framing those articles and what judgments have been passed. So here I'll be, reading the Article 44 in its totality, then break down its parts, various words in it, and what do those words imply, in Article 44. I shall be, bifurcating all of them one by one. So yes, the UCC, the first case, before Article 44, let us very, very briefly define what is UCC. The UCC is about asserting the uniform primacy of constitutional principles of equality between and within religious communities and uniformly ensuring gender justice. Gender justice is very important in that. And I'll be coming back to when I explain rational, I'll be, narrating two very short, incidents and stories which have occurred recently only. So to, explain it better, how gender justice is a very important component of UCC. And UCC, moreover, has nothing to do with the customs and practices of any religion. So, this controversy that the moment UCC is implemented, we'd have to lose our basic customs and practices. It is, again, a very, a superficial argument, because UCC does not harm any essential practices of religion. And, it is just about bringing about some sort of, uniformity amongst, various religions. And uniformity, again, is different from, similarity. Okay. So Article 44 of the Constitution says that the state shall endeavor to secure for citizens a uniform civil code throughout the territory of India. I shall now break up the various constituent parts of the article and try explaining every important term in it. So first of all, the state. What is the meaning of the state? The state, as given in Article 12, includes the government and Parliament of India, and the government and the legislature of each of the states and all local or other authorities within the territory of India, but under the control of the government of India. Now, the question arises, if all local authorities, each state constitutes the state under the definition of Article 44, then is it that, any state legislative assembly tomorrow comes up and, amends, some part of the constitution and intervenes in the religious laws or the personal laws of any community? It would not, be feasible, because Uttar Pradesh Assembly, say, for instance, or a Dehradun Municipal Corporation cannot make a UCC for the entire country, though they can, amend certain, parts in the central laws for implementation in the states that I'll again, come later when I explain the constituting power of Article 44. Now, coming to the word uniform, what does uniform mean in Article 44? The Constitution's framers use the term uniform in Article 44 and not common. We need to understand the difference between uniform on one hand and common on one hand. Because common means one and the same in all the circumstances, while uniform means the same in similar conditions. Like, there is a principle, principle of differentiated responsibilities. If you would have heard about climate change. So, in a broader sense, the responsibilities, the aim remains the same to to protect our climate, to stop climate degradation, whatever it is. But there are differentiated responsibilities in it. So in the same manner, same in similar conditions. Uniform means same in similar conditions. Like, gender justice shall be ensured in every community, and whatever the derogatory part is shall be removed out of it. And its examples I'll be giving in later in this part itself. Different people may have different laws, but the law within a particular group should be uniform. Like, again, as I said that, we have diversity amongst even our, even Hindu religion is not a monolith, or a Muslim Islam is not monolith, Christianity is not monolith. So even in these subgroups, they have different, laws, customs, rituals, which disadvantage certain members of society, which might advantage other members of society. So UCC, aims at bringing these disadvantages to an end by ensuring uniformity for the implementation of laws. And as I said that, climate justice negotiations, I gave an example. Here, the uniformity would mean that all religious and social communities will be subjected to the same set of constitutional principles. No family law of any community would be allowed to violate the right to equality, the right against discrimination, and the idea of gender justice. Any custom or family law that violates these principles would have to go. So, like, for instance, in Islam, in this Islamic personal laws, for instance, if a girl attaining puberty is allowed to marry, but again in under POXO or in the legal marriage rate, it is under POXO the consent age is again 18. So I'll be elaborating this this conflict later. So here it comes the conflict that if you have polygamy or this child marriage, or how to reconcile it with the constitutional principles of gender equality under Article 14. Because if a Hindu woman is allowed to marriage at a certain age, her consent is taken at a certain age, whereas a Muslim woman is allowed to marry at a lower age, how to take her consent and then to measure or compare both the the consents, then again it becomes problematic. So the UCC aims at bringing these two things at a parity and in goal with the constitutional principles. Also, we need to understand these common principles may take different forms for different communities, dependent upon their existing or codified practices. Now, the example I'll be clarifying, unlike Hindu customs, Muslim marriage is a contrast, it is a contract based on nikahnama. A uniform civil code need not require Muslims to abandon this, nor would it require Hindus to adopt it. Different communities can continue to follow radically different, even contrary customs and practices relating to marriage, divorce, adoption, and inheritance, as long as they do not violate a uniform set of constitutional principles. So our, telos, the end goal remains the constitutional principles. Now coming on to our next definition, that is, what does civil means in the Article 44? It means matters where personal rights are in question, such as contract for sale and purchase of goods and services with properties. Again, it is different from criminal, simple as that. And even now coming on to the code part in Article 44, the code does not necessarily mean one single law in every circumstance. It may mean either one enactment, such as Indian Penal Code or the Hindu Code Bill that includes 3 different acts. Again, we need to understand that uniform civil code. So code will not mean, once we have enacted one law at a particular time, for instance, in 2023, so it is, permanent or made forever. Even the Hindu Code Bill has, 3 different constituting parts, and they were enacted in 3 different years, and they keep on amending as the time proceeds. So in the same manner, it is not something like once enacted cannot be changed or something. It will keep evolving since the society is also evolving. Now the last, the fragmentation in Article 44 is the state shall endeavor. So, this is again the play of semantics which lawyers and legal, studies engage in. Now understand it has a very, minute difference. Article 44 uses the state shall endeavor, and other articles in the directive principles of the Constitution, that is Part 4 of the Constitution, they use expressions such as in particular strike, shall take steps, shall promote with special care, shall in particular direct its policy, shall regard its primary duty, etc. And now what, is that there's a difference between all these terms and the state shall endeavor in Article 44. All these terms mean that the duty of the court is far greater than in other directive principle than in Article 44. Means if it has been written the state shall endeavor, it means that constitution, the founding fathers and mothers of the Indian constitution, while debating it, had envisaged that the government shall play an important role in formulating these uniform civil code, because again, we are a representative democracy, and the parliament as the supreme constituting authority in our polity, and it only has the power to enact certain legislations after taking the consultation of every stakeholder in it. So this is simply what state shall endeavor mean. Now coming on to the third part of my discussion, that is understanding the constituting power, or like the constituent power. Now I'll be quoting Professor Faizan Mustafa over here. He has been, as you might people might know, he has been a vice chancellor of various universities and a very legal eminent expert. He quotes that it is erroneous to assume that India has different personal laws because of religious diversity. Like, according to him, it is not that religious diversity is a result of various religious laws. He says that as a matter of fact, the law differs from state to state. Under the Constitution, the power to legislate in respect of personal laws rests with both Parliament and state assemblies. Now, again, I said you that both Parliament and the state assemblies can enact personal laws within their domain. Now, preservation of legal diversity seems to be the reason for inclusion of personal law in the concurrent list. For the pol science students or non science students, it would be better to enumerate that in our constitution. There are three lists. One is union list. The second is state list. The third is the concurrent list. In the union list, the union government has the absolute powers to enact state defense, communications, foreign policy. In the state list, law and order, police, it is the state which has the prerogative to enact certain things. And the concurrent list, wherein both the state and the union government have the right to enact certain laws within their own jurisdiction. But again, we need to keep in mind, the moment the union government enacts a certain law in concurrent list, the law enacted by state will not be applicable. The priority is always given to your union law. So again, Mustafa quotes that had uniformity of laws been the primary concern, personal laws would have been included in the union list, with Parliament having the exclusive jurisdiction to enact laws on these subjects. Again, as I said that, had uniformity of laws, had it been, the intent of constitution makers that we need one linear line of laws, then it would have been in the hands of the union government. For instance, foreign policy. Foreign policy, does not mean that the border states will enact their own foreign policies with the neighboring states. No, it is the Union of India, the Foreign Affairs Minister of Union of India, that deals with various countries, whether it is a border state or I would say a sea sharing border or whatever it is. In the same manner, so juxtapose it with this personal laws. There was no intent of uniformity, and that is what the states have also been given the power. Now, bringing amendments to central personal laws with enactments such as the Hindu Marriage Act is possible under entry number 5. Matlab, in concurrent list, agar Hindu Marriage Act, if someone, some state wants to bring some amendment, it is fine. But this power cannot be stretched to include enactment of a uniform civil code for whole of India. Again, if a particular state, say Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Uttarakhand, want to amend something in the Hindu Marriage Act according to their local customs of the tribes, they are allowed to do that. But that does not mean that once they are on the path of enacting amending some personal laws, that they'll be implemented to whole of India. No, the broader framework shall remain the union law. Once the legislative field is occupied by parliamentary legislation, states do not have much freedom to enact laws. Such laws would require presidential assent under Article 254. So, again, I said, the moment the union government enact any laws, the states do not have, the liberty to enact their own laws. Then, in special circumstances, that the laws made by the state are to be, sent to president under Article 254 for the assent of the president that, okay, there's a conflict between the union and the state law. We want to go with the state law. If the president assents, then the state law prevails. Otherwise, it is the union law, and that is why UCC for the whole country shall be, enacted by the union parliament itself because of these technical difficulties. As I said, diversity is not limited to religion, ethnicities, or languages. Diversity is also, there in, I would say, in case of federalism and constitution powers also. The special status have been given to various states, under the constitution. So again, we are, very complex polity, I would say, in very short. So now, coming to the fourth section of my talk, it will be implications of the Uniform Civil Code. So in this section, I shall broadly discuss in three major steps, like what happens, or what might happen if Uniform Civil Code in case is brought about any government. So it would result in three far-reaching legislative changes. The first one would result in extensive reform of the existing personal laws as suggested by the 21st Law Commission of India. So Law Commission, as I told you, like in the introduction itself, that the minister also told in Parliament that the Law Commission has been in consultation with various stakeholders on this, how to bring about uniformity amongst the laws. So like, what would this mean, reform of existing personal laws? That would include restricting and discouraging the legally permissible practice of polygamy among Muslims while safeguarding the interest of making provisions to safeguard the interest of women. As I said earlier also, like in Islam, you can marry more than once under the personal laws. But once the UCC, comes in, this practice of polygamy, or that is marrying more than once, might have to be stopped. It would also mean simplification of divorce and adopting among Christians and doing away with notice period under the Special Marriage Act. The Law Commission has also recommended doing away with the doctrine of co-parcenary under the Hindu law and tax privileges on the Hindu undivided family. So Hindu undivided family, gets some tax privileges under, Hindu Code Bill. So again, that is a very complex topic to deal with. So I shall leave it over here itself. The basic, you need to understand that, personal laws, once they are reformed, shall affect each and every religion. So, this controversy, whenever UCC is talked about, so we always have this in our mind, no, the minorities will be at the receiving end of it, or, the majority will, play its tyranny or something. No. One thing is for sure that once the UCC is there, it is going to, affect all the religions in some or the other way, whether it be Hindu, Muslim, any Christian, Sikh, or whatever religion it is. Now, the second legislative change would involve the codification of customs and practices of different communities that are not yet covered by any law. Now, there are, again, I would say, a number of, customs and practices of various religion, groups in India. They are not codified yet. So even if we would have recently, listened our Honorable President of India, Srimati Draupadi Murmu, in our video, she's saying, while giving the speech, she falls in between, diverts away from her speech, and she gives the example, as in still in village areas, rural communities, tribal people are very much aloof, secluded from this, I would say the state apparatus, and they have their own system of inheritance. For instance, if there's a piece of land, there are three brothers. Three brothers will, bifurcate, divide that piece of land amongst them. After that division, they might not go to the court for registry or something as it is done in, the urban people do that, going to court and having a registry in their names. But once it is divided, they inform their community. The community knows about this division. What happens when these three brothers have children, say each has 2 or 3 children, then that particular piece of divided land gets divided further amongst 2 or 3 children. And this, continues from one generation to the other. And again, these people do not, confirm with that legal registry work or taking, the legal ownership of the land. So again, this is just one instance where rural communities or tribal communities are not very much under, codified norms and laws. So in the same manner, there are various customs and practices also which are not codified. So, for instance, the principle that the interest of the child must be paramount in any dispute concerning custody or guardianship need to be included in law. As of now, various religions, again, I said that, divorce, it is different, everything is different. So Hindu code bill might have, codified the divorce provisions, the ownership rights, the inheritance to the women and everything. But again, when it comes to Islam, they have the Islam has its own, personal laws. So the guardianship of the child, or you all might be familiar with what happened with the Shah Banu case. So this this is the complexity where the Uniform Civil Code might help. That, again, see, we come back to the the point where we started from. The basic aim remains to safeguard the interest of the citizens, whether it be women, whether it be children, whether it be the most vulnerable in any community. So now the third, the part of what reform might herald is the scope of existing Special Marriage Act could be expanded to create a common civil code for those citizens who do not wish to be governed by any of the existing community-specific family laws. A prototype of such a code already exists in Goa and is applicable to all Goan citizens. So again, Special Marriage Act is a very different thing and quite complex, under which, like, people from different states can marry, and that is like how it happens. And we do not, need to go into that. At very basic, we need to understand that Special Marriage Act, once it is, UCC comes in, so, again, there will be uniformity, and even in that case, that special treatment or derogatory treatment might end. I'll just take a minute break and have water. Okay. So now, I hope everything is clear until now, like whatever I said in the 4 parts. If there is any, thing which you did not get or something, you might type in the, chat box. We might take it all together at the end of, the discussion, or if still, because we are halfway through our discussion. So I would request you, if there is any, if I'm going very fast or if I'm not clear anywhere, you might please tell me. Any of the audiences can, interrupt through the chat box and tell me. Is everything okay? Shall I proceed?
Yes, it's you can continue. It's very clear and
Okay.
understandable.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so now we shall come to the fifth part of our discussion, that is we are, discussing about UCC. Hindu Code Bill as a reference point, because it was, the first attempt at codifying the laws of the majority religion in this country. And so I'll be not detailing very much, but just to, explain you how complex was it, uh, to bring about a Hindu code bill. I would give you very, small points, and you will get an idea, if UCC has to be brought about, how much of a hassle it is. So first point is that the Hindu Code Bill Committee was constituted in 1941, but it took 14 years to pass the legislation. I repeat, 14 years to pass the legislation, and not as one uniform act, but as 3 different acts. That is Hindu Marriage Act of 1955, Hindu Succession Act of 1956, and Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act of 1956. So 14 years of discussion and still not a single law. It was 3 different laws. And not all reforms could be incorporated because of the opposition from the Hindu right groups. Like, even, in the Congress itself, we all know that immediately after the independence, Congress was a rainbow coalition. It had many diverse viewpoints, liberals, conservatives, everyone was there in the Congress. And, the tallest leaders amongst, in the Congress party like Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, Patabi Sitaramaya, M.A. Iyengar, Madan Mohan Malviya, Kailash Nath Kaju, these people opposed, the Hindu Code Bill. And Ambedkar also resigned. So in the Hindu debate, when the debate took place, you might be surprised to know that out of 28 speakers, 23 people opposed it. Then in 1949, an all India anti-Hindu Code Bill committee was formed under the leadership of Swami Karpatari Ji Maharaj, who justified unregulated polygamy amongst Hindus. Now Hindus are not married to allowed to marry more than once. Like they cannot keep one more. They cannot have more than one wife at a particular time. But this anti Hindu Code Bill committee was justifying polygamy. Again, it was Shyama Prasad Mukherjee who said that instead of a Hindu Code Bill, the government should bring about a uniform civil code. Again, Shyama Prasad Mukherjee happens to be the founder of Bharatiya Janata Sangh, and which was the parent party of what we see the Bharatiya Janata Party today. Again, there was some technical issue in this argument also, because as we have seen in the case of our neighbors and elsewhere, reforming I would say the personal laws of majority community in a particular geographical landscape is easier than reforming those of the minorities. And again, we need to understand when this Hindu Code Bill was being brought about, we were going through a very tumultuous time of partition. And, the country had been divided. There was widespread violence, death, arsonery, loot, rape cases. And of course, the minorities had to be assured. And one way of assuring minorities of their existence in this country was, the prevalence of their own personal laws. And minorities have been given, protection under Article 25 to 28 in Part 3 of the Constitution of India. So this was the rationale behind perhaps not, enacting, the Uniform Civil Code immediately after the independence. And interestingly, on September 15, 1951, President Dr. Rajendra Prasad threatened to return the bill or veto it. Like after a law is passed, it goes to the president. So PM Jawaharlal Nehru yielded, the bill was not passed. In 51, the bill was, put on hold. Then eventually passed after several years, it did not give daughters a share in the Hindu majority joint family property. So like the daughters were not given a right, it came, the right to Hindu women and the Hindu joint families property was, given in an amendment that came in 2005 during the UPA regime. See, a gap of almost say 50 years or 40 years over there and 45 years or something gap. And then Hindu daughters were, given the right in property of a joint family. Again, the amount, even after this amendment was brought about in 2005, the amount of land actually inherited by Hindu women is a very small fraction of what they're entitled, to inherit it under the reformed Hindu law. Even when they inherit land, it is invariably much less than an equal share. The power of will is used to give the entire property to sons. So again, as I said, imagining something on the academic front or the institution or the legal front is very, very, very different from what actually happens in the society. So the moment a verdict is passed by the Supreme Court, for instance, say the Supreme Court said that no one will be booked under sedition until the law is reviewed. But who does listen? Still, the cases are booked by the state governments under sedition law, despite Supreme Court putting it to a halt. In the same manner, after 2005 amendment, the daughters were entitled to inherit property, but no, that does not actually get implemented. Again, diversity prevails in the implementation even. So now coming on to the sixth part of our discussion, that is, I'll take one example and then discuss about the diversity in personal laws in India. If you just go on to, I suggest you someday, since I'm a political science student, so it's my habit, or I would say a passion to, keep, discussing about various things. various customs. So recently only I wrote paper on in my gender studies paper, like open elective. So I chose this topic of color preferences in how this color preferences affect the performative roles of various gender, male or female. And you will be surprised to know that even in the Hindu community, the answers which I got behind women wearing red, while when I interviewed at least 55 respondents across this Delhi NCR region one on one, I asked them reasons like as to why Hindu women prefer wearing red on certain rituals, during certain rituals or on marriage or whatever it is. So the responses which I got were so diverse. Some said that it is a symbol of Shakti Durga. Then again, Shakti Durga, we all know there are various forms, and even a white is a predominant color in Shakti. So that does not explain the rationale. The same Hindus, someone coming from the northeast answered that they do prefer wearing white, during their marriages. So imagine even thinking about a white costume during marriage for a Hindu family living in North India might be troublesome. But in Northeast, the same Hindu family of a different ethnic origin might be wearing white during their marriage. So this is just one very very simple example of how diverse India is. So now coming back to the personal loss, as this was just I deviated you for a while, to capture your attention actually as to how diversity prevails even in colors. So these are the laws. So now, despite the Hindu court will having been enacted many years ago, Hindus are not governed by one uniform law. For instance, marriage among close relatives is prohibited in the north, but considered auspicious in the south. Again, in northern India, you might not, find close cousins, or you might, close cousins, or you would say that close kul we say have this khandan, marrying in one gotra. Okay, but in south, that the same gotras or marriages and close kinship is allowed. Again, diversity. Though the uniform that the Hindu code bill does exist since 1956. Uh, Again, the constitution also has certain provisions where it protects certain, local customs of tribes in Nagaland, Meghalaya, Mizoram. And to be very honest, I have kept, the customary laws of these tribals out of my purview of this, uniform civil code discussion, because once we touch that topic, there are constitutional complexities, there are personal laws, there are tribal laws, there are again, what we are seeing happening in money is an example of how diverse are tribes are, and even a single the issue of reservation can cause so much spark that n number of people have died and brutality has happened. So you can imagine touching the personal laws of these tribes might be very very complex and difficult, and therefore the process needs to be very very gradual. And the constitution itself says that let these personal laws be protected. Okay, so moving on to okay. Before that, I'll take an example of Goa. So in Goa, it is always said in common language कि वहाँ पे UCC है, but no, that is not the case. Hindus of Goa are still governed by the Portuguese family and succession laws. Imagine Hindu code bill is in existence, but the Hindus of Goa are governed by the Portuguese family and succession laws because they were governed because the state of Goa was earlier the colony of Portuguese. The reformed Hindu law of 1955-56 is not applicable to them. An unreformed Shastric Hindu law in marriage, divorce, adoption, and joint family remains valid. The Shariat Act of 1937 is yet to be extended to Goa, and the state's Muslims are governed by Portuguese law as well as Shastric Hindu law, but not by Muslim personal law. Even the Special Marriage Act, the sort of progressive civil code, has not yet been extended there. So you can imagine Goa, a state in India, does not, have personal laws, and it is not governed by the Hindu code bill even. So this was just two examples of how complex and diverse our country is. So now coming on to the second last part of my discussion, that is the rationale behind bringing about the UCC. The rationale behind UCC stands on three pillars, and the same rationale did exist in the Constituent Assembly, was backed by leaders like J.L. Nehru, B.R. Ambedkar, Ram Manohar Lohia, Shyama Prasad Mukherjee, when he was a minister. So, these rationale does exist even today, and these have been, backed by the feminist movement in India also. The first rationale behind UCC is equality before the law. We need to understand. I'll narrate a very short, anecdote from here. When this triple talaq law was being debated in Parliament in Lok Sabha, MJ Akbar, then minister in this Modi government, he talked about an incident when, this Hindu code bill was debated in 1950s. A Muslim woman actually approached Nehru and asked, you are, giving certain rights to women under the Hindu code bill. Why are you not, bringing something about of a kind of a UCC where Muslim women also do get rights? Nehru at that point in time said that this is not an opportune time. Again, as I said, that our country had gone through a partition, so that would have not been an opportune time. But now, after 75 years of independence, Muslim women do require a uniform civil code, and which, brings them toward, at par with the Hindu women in terms of marriage contracts. Okay, now, second argument, as always, goes that when all the citizens of this country are governed by as one Indian penal code, why not same principle can be applied to civil code? So here another a very short narration. Recently, Bombay High Court passed a verdict on the age of consent in the POCSO cases, where the POCSO age consent is 18, but again we all know that hormonal changes and do happen before 18, and a teenager is exploring his or her body. So the age of consent, they might get into physical relationship. So in this here, it was a very interesting thing that in Islam, women are allowed to marry once they attain puberty. That might be 16 or something. But in POCSO, the age of consent remains 18. How to reconcile both the things? For instance, a Muslim woman is brought to the court that, she's married and her consent was not taken. But a Muslim woman's personal law says that, once she has attained puberty, she can marry. But again, the POCSO says that before 18, that consent is not there of a child. Like if a child, if someone gets into a personal relationship, physical relationship before the age of 18, especially a girl, then her consent is not valid. So how to reconcile, an individual's, rationality of giving consent or its personal laws and the institutional laws framed by the government. So UCC also aims, to streamline this conflict by, unifying the age of consent. The third rationale is, of course, different communities can enjoy their separate customs and rituals, but no community can be allowed to violate the fundamental rights of the individuals. That is clear. आप अपने customs, religions follow करिए, no problem. But the broader constitution principles, that is right to equality, right to freedom of speech and expression, right against exploitation, discrimination, these cannot be violated by your personal laws. That is very, very simple. So this is the three rationale behind the Uniform Civil Code. Now, we are at the fag end of our session, talk. What could be the way forward? So now, the BJP manifesto for the 2019 Lok Sabha elections had stressed that there cannot be gender equality without a UCC, okay, and promised the UCC would be drafted drawing from the best traditions and harmonizing them with the modern times. So what does this imply? This has been the promise of all the governments, like if the UCC gets implemented, again, it can, as I said, at the very earliest, that it is not just the Muslim laws which will be affected or the Hindu laws or the Christian laws. The laws, the once the UCC comes, everyone shall have to compromise on certain provisions. This implies that the UCC would include the best provisions of all personal laws. it is again, a khichdi kind of a thing. You take something from us, we give something to you. So this is, what the UCC might sound like. Again, uh, as I said that one way can be, at a very rudimentary level, and as the Law Commission is also doing, taking stakeholders into consultation, because these religious leaders, whether it be pandits, ulema, or fathers in the church, or bhaiji in the gurdwara, so these all people do have influence on their religion, and these people know the religious codes of their communities. So taking their consultation matters a lot, and also the legitimacy which the UCC needs from the society, or the acceptance which it needs from the society, can come through these channels only. So the government is, of course, on the right way of doing the things, that is consulting every stakeholder and then coming about a common at a common ground. So this shall be my concluding remarks. Uh, Manmohan Singh, while presenting the 1991 budget and liberalizing the state economy of India, said that the LPG reforms are an idea whose time has come. So I would say UCC is an idea whose time has come, because many of our forefathers, our political leaders had been demanding that the state must comply with the directive principles enunciated in the constitution. Uh, so when you are saying that the state must comply with the directive principles, though directive principles are not enforceable, it becomes the duty of the state to implement them. So now, once the government is on the path of implementing them, we should not turn our back on these key principles. Again, we cannot say that 75 years after independence and 73 years after adopting the constitution, the country is not ready for this idea. We are ready and we are mature enough that a UCC can be implemented in our country after due consultation and taking into account every viewpoint. And therefore, the goal of a UCC should ideally be reached in a piecemeal manner. Gradually, start implementing, start spreading awareness. For instance, I would congratulate the organizers of this talk, that they chose this topic. Let's decode UCC, without going into political ruckus of the topic. You've done a good deal for the rural students who will be listening to this talk. They'll be aware. In the same manner, the government also also needs to take the step to spread awareness about the UCC. What does it entail? How will it help? And especially making aware the most downtrodden or the most vulnerable sections of the communities, like women, like for instance the Dalits, or the lower caste in various communities, or the tribals, like how this UCC might, the so-called lower caste, apologies, in all the religions, how the UCC might help them. And because these are the sections, once the law is passed, whether it be on the inheritance of, property by women, or whether it be the SC Prevention of Atrocities Act, the illiterate masses of our country are either unaware about their rights, or this information about the laws do not reach them. As there was a famous dialogue in this movie, 2007 movie by Deepa Mehta, where she depicts this 1940s scene, wherein there is this law passed by the government, Widow Remarriage Act. So when a widow asks a lawyer that why do we not know that there is a provision such as of a remarriage? So the lawyer replied that no, things which are not meant to be told to you are not even informed to you. So in the same manner, if a UCC comes about, it would empower women. It would empower, the downtrodden sections, or the sections which have been, exploited since centuries. So they might get something to, in their hands to claim their share in the property, their share of equality, and right to live with dignity. This is all, from my side, and we need to keep in mind that formal equality is never, the guarantee of substantial equality. Substantial equality does require you to, bring about changes on ground. And as we have seen, the implementation of the Hindu code will also, it requires, strict implementation that yes, women do inherit property. And in the same manner, when the UCC is implemented, women do use UCC to claim their rights. Thank you. This was all from my side. I hope I was able to, simplify or what you wanted me to do to you, decode this topic in the most simplest manner I could. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Himanshuji, thank you so much for your time and insights on Uniform Civil Code. As the topic says, let's decode Uniform Civil Code. You have decoded it in very simplest way, and you made us understand how this particular Uniform Civil Code implicates in the society and how what its main objective and why the people are misinterpreting it, but how we have to see it. I think you have justified to the talk. I hope all the members even have understood it. If anyone have any queries or some questions, you can just post in the chat box. We can take it. And as you mentioned, it applicates. I mean, it doesn't. It doesn't impersonate or it doesn't trouble minorities or any particular some part of section of the society. It is being bringing to uphold the constitutional values, to make it as a uniform civil code for maintaining gender equality and everything in an equal manner, to avoid the discriminations. So we look forward from the government of India to bring its draft, so we can even organize one more debatable session or an insightful session like this on the draft of the government of India, which is brought in to discuss more further. So I think no one has any doubts. Siddharth Pandey, if you have any doubts, you can just, I think you are a lawyer from your background, right? So if you have any queries, you can just go post here, or any insights you want to share, you can. Any other member present here, or else we can wind it up session. If you want to say anything, sir, you can say, Himanshu, sir.
No, I hope, like, again, as I said, that, this thing is still to be, known to many of us. Even I myself am not, an expert on this topic, because as I, have been mentioning throughout my discussion, we are a very, very, very diverse society. Every 5 kilometers, language changes. Every 5 kilometers, the dialect changes, customs change. With generations, things change, and with area also things change. So let us wait for the government to bring about something, at least a rudimentary draft, and we might then think about it and then form our opinion. As of now, the basics need to be clear.
Yes, that's the reason that.
And my humble, yes, sorry,
no, you can continue.
My humble advice: do not get into controversies of this majority, minority, etc. Do read the Constitution of India. If you want to explore more about it, refer to the Constituent Assembly debates, wherein the founding fathers and mothers of our Constitution debated each and every provision very, very extensively, and they thought about, and that is why our Constitution is surviving even after 75 years, after an emergency that was imposed and everything. So you need to understand that the basic intent of the Constitution makers, and then form your opinion. This is all from my side.
Yeah. That you have said rightly. We have to not come to the conclusion at very end, coming into the controversies. You said very right. As we saw the CAA or some laws, farmer laws. So unless it is coming into the picture, the people start agitating. So in order to prevent that, to make the youth to understand what these policies coming in, first we have to understand the policies. We should get into it. We have to see what exactly how it is. Then we can come to conclusion whether it is a benefiting or whether it is harming someone. Unless we are doing that, we are getting conclusion and we are doing riots. It imparts ourselves personally, even the people who are doing it. So I would be suggesting to all the viewers who will be watching later in the YouTube as well, always follow PARI. PARI in the sense, because why I'm saying PARI, because it is an acronym. I would be saying the meaning of PARI, because nowadays news must be report what it has happened, but news is showing their own perspective, their own views. They are trying to rub their own views onto the society. That's where the chaos is being created. So being a 140 million people from this nation, as you mentioned, every 5 kilometers we can find the diversity. So when news channels shows their own perspective and they want to rub their own perspective in the society, then definitely chaos will happen. So in order to prevent that, we must follow an acronym called PARI. So whenever we see certain information, we have to pause ourselves. P stands for pause. A stands for ask. Ask your resources, ask your well wishers whether it is right or wrong. Then review your own self. Don't believe what they said. Review yourself, do research, then inform, then pass on information to your friends. So, yeah, PARI stands for pause, ask, review, and inform. This is what we would suggest to the viewers, everyone, to make the society around us. Yeah. So thank you so much, Himanshuji, for your valuable time, for your valuable insights. We look forward in the near future as well to do such sessions or on this particular aspect, many more. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Sai.
Thank you. And I would also like to thank Ms. Vani Gupta of Project Intern for coming forward and moderating today's session. Thank you, Vani.
So much.
And thank you, sir.
Thank you.